You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That rockin' tune means it is time to kick off our broadcast week here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. Yep, it's time once again for the Option Block, your bi-weekly source for all things options related, coming at you every Monday and Thursday, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Hope you guys are liking the slew of content coming your way these days on the network. Trying to keep up with you there. You guys are demanding on the content front these days. Good problem to have. We're happy to be able to oblige. Wherever you're listening to this, if you like all the slew of content, not just the old OB, but you got the Vol Views on Friday, you got TWIFO OB Part 2 on Thursday, you got OPR and Boot Camp on our Education Wednesday, you had Advisor's Option on Tuesday last week, usually some interviews thrown in there. Crypto later on today after the bell here, after this show. A lot to unpack here on the network. If you like all of that, make sure you leave reviews and comments on your platform of choice so other folks can continue to discover all of our fun programming. Of course, keep those questions coming, too. We do love to hear from you guys. And because it is Monday, we're kicking off our broadcast week. We like to have a little bit of fun here, kick things off, get the blood pumping a little bit. So without further ado, it is time for another edition of our Name That Tune 80s TV Theme Edition.
Shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist. Michael Knight, a young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
All right. The YouTube copyright team will be all over that forthwith, so we have to trim it for the podcast version. Live, folks, you get the full live, the live sampling out there. I tried to cut out the words because he says the name of the show right at the beginning of the theme there. So, Uncle Mike, I do believe you went last time, so you get to go first this week. Can you possibly hazard a guess as to what show that is, sir? And also, Uncle Mike from St. Charles Wealth Management, welcome back to the program to you as well.
Always good to be here. Now, it's funny that is, I literally have that TV theme as the ringtone on my cell phone. So when you put that on, I thought I had another phone call coming in.
So if you get this wrong, it would be very
easy to me.
It would be very embarrassing.
Yes. So I'm going to go with KnightRider. I actually had NBC Studios send me a kit back in the 80s when I was in grade school. So yeah, that one's kind of easy for me.
Wow. Uncle Mike, hardcore Michael Knight fan. Who knew? Did you have the sweet back in the 80s? Did you have like the little kind of mini perm and all that kind of good stuff, Uncle Mike?
No, I was a redhead, so that was not it. So I just thought KITT was a cool car, and like every grade school kid around that time, I was a big fan of the talking car and all the cool things he could do, and he could hit the turbo boost button, and didn't really like any of the actors' work after KnightRider, but I guess Baywatch was okay. But compared to KnightRider, I mean, he might as well have just retired from acting after KnightRider.
That is true. He hit his peak very early there. That was peak Hasselhoff. Kind of hard to come back from that one. So Mr. Rock Lobster, Mr. Uncle Mike already guessed it, but let's welcome on the Rock Lobster himself, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Welcome to the show, A. And B, do you have any fond memories of KnightRider? I know you were a little older. You were about 45 when the show came out. But what did you two order a KITT car for your home use, sir?
I have to say I did not order a KITT car, but I have to take a little bit of umbrage with the TOSAW. Baywatch might be the best, most genius TV program ever invented in human history. So I don't know really where. I don't even think people know David Hasselhoff from KnightRider. All they know is Baywatch. But, I think if you're like a North Korean dictator, what are you watching every day? KnightRider or are you watching Baywatch reruns? I'm going to guess the latter. That's all I'm saying.
Hasselhoff was on Baywatch, too?
Yeah, I don't think anyone tuned into Baywatch for hassling the old Hoff. But we'll have to put it out to our audience to be the ultimate arbiter of this. Perhaps a quick flash Twitter poll. What is your favorite Hasselhoff TV show? Only two choices, Baywatch or KnightRider. We're going to put it out now. It's going to last pretty much until the end of the show. And we'll see what you guys think as we head on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, getting that poll out there for you now as we head on into the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading, what is lighting up our collective tapes, what is moving things in the broad market out there. And coming into the kickoff of the week, it's kind of a weird mixed week yet again. And, the Dow and the NASDAQ are telling two very different stories if you just look at those two. You look at S&P, it's kind of like, let's sit on the hill and let the Tigers fight today. Not really doing a heck of a lot. Dow leading the charge to the downside, off about 0.75%. We've got S&P pretty much off to slightly unched off about 0.05% or so. Not a heck of a lot on the red there. And the NASDAQ up about 0.75%. So again, a tale of two different tapes depending on where you're looking out there on the old tape. Of course, I take that back. Our old friend IWM also kind of challenging the Dow to the downside. They're also off about 0.75%. So small caps and old school leading the charge to the downside. Tech-heavy NASDAQ to the upside. And S&P has kind of got all of the above in there now. Is kind of unched out there, which is kind of interesting. Our old friend VIX, let's see how interesting our friend VIX is. Coming into showtime, it was just a little bit shy of 24. A little bit shy of 25, about 24.9. That puts it down a little about over a handle, about 1.25 handles. It has come off a little bit more since then, so at about 24.70. So it puts it off almost 1.5 handles from where it was this time last show. VVIX at about a 112.5 coming into the show, puts it down about 7.5. So coming off that 120 level that it's been pegged at for some time. That's a barometer we like to watch out here, VVIX. At around 120, you got to kind of sit up and pay attention. A little bit shy of that, maybe not. And then, of course, if you get down to the mid-70s, it's not going to stay there for very long. So get ready. Ball's going to start moving again. Unless it's 2017, then, of course, all bets are off. And VXX, our old friend, the ever-evolving, ever-eroding VXX, getting a little bit back, I should say, this week. Up about 0.75 point to about 25.25. That's where it was right before showtime. Let's see where it's hanging out right now. Actually, coming up a little more than 25.75 now. So that puts it up about 1.25 points from last show. So getting a little bit back here on the old VXX train. All those folks out there who love to fade the downside, not feeling the love out there. Let's go around the horn before we break down what's the most active in terms of the individual name and indeed the index love as well. Let's go the opposite of the way. Mr. Rock Lobster didn't get a chance to guess his favorite show, which is, of course, KnightRider. So let him go first. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, what is lighting up your tape on this interesting / mixed start to the week, sir?
I don't know if anybody's noticing, but Tesla is up like a $200 on a pre-split price.
I don't know what is this name you're referring to? I've never heard of this. TSLA? Is this a Russian vodka name?
You know, it's funny if you described it as a car company that's in the solar business, right? Solar home panel business. And you would say it's one of the most highest valued companies of all time. Like the car business and solar panel business. Two businesses in the past. And just, automotives have not been great investments in the last 10 years, like solar. But apparently this one is much better, though. So I'm actually just trying to price some upside right now because it looks like it's going to 500 this week. I don't care what you say, valuation, this, whatever. It's just people are buying it. So if you're a momentum trader and you trade options, there are ways to do that. But that, I think, and also the fact that, VIX keeps kind of ramping up. And I think part of the problem, well, I don't even know if it's a problem. It's just, how can vol go down when these stocks keep going up? I mean, you were a market maker, Mark. You understand if they just keep taking call after call from the liquidity providers, just the public keeps piling in to buy calls, where's vol going? It's just, how can it go down if there's no option sellers? So this is just one of those cases where, options level bull market. And for people, instead of spending $1 billion on, one share of Tesla or 2 shares of Tesla, they can buy a contract or two, or spending buying 100 shares of Tesla, they can buy one contract. So it's just, some stocks right now, there's a real speculative market and probably 3 dozen momentum names at the top. Every other stock hit with the ugly stick. That's it. I thought we'd have a little bit more follow through from the Abbott Labs news. There's also some more positive COVID news that maybe it's not as deadly for the average person as people thought. None of that, I think, is translated to the tape, but I think the market kind of already saw that happening, to be honest, and that's why it's trading at 3,500 and not 2,500. So I think we kind of pre-bought, or it's a pre-fade of the COVID news. Also, the betting lines in the elections have gotten tighter, so I think a lot of factors, but mostly I think it's just liquidity driving, the top 20 names in tech, and part of those names are in the S&P 500. It's spilling over, and I think that's what we got until they stop going up. Probably until people stop. It's one of those weird things where I don't, sometimes skew works like this, or a lot of times it works like this, where the market needs to go down for vol to come in because you have to it has to change directions and create a range. And we haven't done that yet. So I think that's what I'm watching. And I am not a tape fighter. I would prefer just to write it. So that's what we got. So all the old economy stuff, dead to me until it's not. And still all the new economy, the sexy stuff like Amazon, getting drones, things like that, pretty bullish. I mean, the stock's already trades at a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. So I assume a lot of this is priced in, but right now it's for a very narrow part of the market. It feels like 1999 or 1998 or 97. And actually, you remember all those weird macro issues kind of derailed the market short term, but we don't have them today. Doesn't mean we won't have them tomorrow, but we don't have them today.
Oh, yeah. So much to unpack there, Mr. Rock Lobster. You're right about the Tesla thing. I mean, it's hard to argue a fundamental argument for this valuation. And yet, from a momentum perspective, it's hard to argue against it. This thing just continues to soar higher. Folks piling in as we speak up. Yeah, almost 40 handles, another almost 9%. 481.5 listeners. I guess that puts the cat out of the bag on where that one was on our poll. We'll get to that in a little bit. You guys had a lot of thoughts on our where they would close today post-split poll. We'll get to that in a few minutes here. Also out there in all things you mentioned there, Mr. Rock Lobster. Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue that the markets should be rallying again right off all this COVID news when we could maybe make the argument that was roughly 1,000 points ago in the S&P. That's when the good news was priced into the COVID. At this point now, it's kind of like the buy the rumor, sell the fact kind of thing. As you're right, the latest iterations on the virus news don't seem to be budging the market north the way it used to out there. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, same question for you as you're there over and over again playing your KnightRider song on your phone on a loop. That aside, sir, what is catching your eye in today's, I guess, kind of Uncle Mike kind of day? I guess depends where you look, sir.
Well, KnightRider and Baby Shark, those are the two songs I just can't get enough of, I guess. But you're welcome now for everyone that has Baby Shark going through their head again.
I hate you forever, sir.
Yes. I kind of have to say it, but it's not really that much. Never before in the history of the entire market has there ever been a better chance to sell than right now, because we are technically up today. So we are technically at all-time highs, but not really by much. And so I didn't really give you that much enthusiasm with it today, because I think it's like less than a point in the S&P. The things that are jumping out to me, of course, Tesla and then Apple is still up almost 4% on the day today as well, with after the split, or actually it's up even more than that right now. So Apple's definitely moving. Like I've been saying before, though, the concerns that I have of both Tesla and Apple is that I'm getting a lot of phone calls from people that really typically aren't involved in the market wanting to get in on the action, and that's usually a pretty bearish sign for the markets. So not just because of, we still own Apple and the triple income and the strategic night. We still like Apple, but with that, it's still just be cautious out there and don't put your whole retirement savings into it right now. So that's the one thing that I'd like to say on that. But you're right. Valuation-wise, you kind of scratch your head at both of these, but momentum-wise, you can't argue with it. So I just remember for years in the early days of the option block, being in all the Apple exposure I was, and Longo and Sebastian would make fun of me on a daily basis, and I'd say, they'd say, well, why do you feel it's going to keep going up? And my response was always, because it's Apple, and it always did. So that's just kind of what happened. So we have that. There is a lot of macro news that's happening with COVID, saying that I believe the CDC released something saying that a small percentage of the cases of the deaths that had to do with COVID are COVID-only deaths. Most of them had some other relating condition to it. But in reality, that's something that I think a lot of us already knew beforehand, or kind of had a feeling of beforehand, just based on some of the news. It just kind of became official with the CDC releasing it. So we have that. Also, there's the Kenosha news. We have news from campaign trails for both our presidential candidates. We also have debates coming soon. So there's a lot happening right now. And when you combine that with the news of the Fed saying what we talked about last week, with how they're going to basically just try and help the economy as opposed to control inflation, and kind of shifted their role, 2020 is really a crazy year. So that's just lighting up my tape right now, Mark.
That might be the biggest understatement you've ever made on this program, Uncle Mike. 2020 is a crazy year. Yes. Crazy, to put it mildly, out there. When you got the double canes coming at you in the Gulf like we had last week, and that was barely a blip on the radar, you know you've had a pretty tumultuous year already so far. Let's see how tumultuous it was for the markets. Coming into the showtime today, we saw a decent paper on the tape. Not a ton, but a decent amount out here. Right before showtime, we saw VIX at about 183,000 contracts, probably a little bit north of that now. The ADV has ticked up a little bit as well, about 20,000 from our last show, up to about 339,000. So once again, not threatening to break that 300K level like it was not too long. I think it got down to like 299 very briefly there. So it has ticked up a little bit as we've seen a few more active days last week out there in VIX land. SPY was at about 1.2 million. The ADV is a little bit north of 3.5 million out there in SPY land. The S closing in on 600K. The ADV still shy of a million out there, 962,000 out there as well. So decent paper for a seasonally light, seasonally adjusted season out here in the S. The Qs closing in on 500,000. The ADV about almost 1.1 million, so closing in on half of their ADV as well. And the IWM was the laggard, even though it is moving yet again. I guess folks have seen IWM and just Russell 2000 move so much of late that 3/4 of a percentage point to the downside is kind of nothing. You bat your eye at that these days because only 133,000 contracts were on the tape coming into Showtime. The ADVs are right around 450,000 out there. Now let's move out to the single names. These came in right before Showtime as well. So again, these probably have added a few since then. But it cost you at the time 131,000 to break into the top 10. Not a ton, but not nothing either. And that gets us to a newcomer on the top 10 here. This is Workhorse Group, ticker symbol WKHS. They manufacture electric vehicles for delivery and other uses, so kind of commercial vehicles out there, which is kind of interesting. 131,000 contracts for them. I guess all things electric vehicle are just going to be lighting it up out there today. Be prepared for that, listeners. Number 9, Amazon, 135,000 contracts. Number 8, Walmart. They are the perhaps soon-to-be owners of TikTok fame. 145,000. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one. Walmart and Microsoft and TikTok. The Microsoft side makes a little bit more sense. The Walmart side, TikTok as an e-commerce play, may have a skeptical hippo to look at that one askance a little bit. Number 7, Bank of America, 148,000. Number 6, Intel, 253,000. Now we're jumping up a little bit here. Number 5, Microsoft, 259,000. You got some old world tech sneaking in there over there. Number 4, actually, NIO. Once again, back to the electric vehicles, 323,000. Number 3, AMD, 498,000. AMD on fire, but not enough to topple our top 2 juggernauts out here, listeners. Number 2, Tesla, all things electric cars. You know what's up with them. 1.3, almost 1.4 million coming into Showtime already. So this split has just set the world on fire. Same thing with Apple. Apple was closing in on 2 million contracts at about 1.85 million right before Showtime. That's just crazy paper out here. Let's look for some biases before we roll on out of the top 10 here. Looks like there's a tie between AMD and Intel. Oh, no, I take that back. Those are number 2. They're both tied at 83% to the call side. Number 1 is Workhorse, 84% of that paper coming on the call side of the ledger. Been a while since we've seen a put-dominated name on the top 10 here, and it's not going to be today either. Look, the least call-heavy I think we have is 61%. For Bank of America. That's about the closest we have to puts leading the dance. So you know what's driving all that action in our top part of our top 10 here. Of course, the post-split madness euphoria, call it what you will, for Tesla and for Apple. We asked you guys last week, courtesy of our buddy there, Mr. Overby on Options Playbook Radio. He put on some interesting colors around Tesla and Apple going into their big splits, and he wanted to know what you guys thought about whether you thought these names would close. We're not even there yet. I think the answer is probably already obvious, but he wanted to know where you guys thought they would close on Monday on a split-adjusted basis. Higher, lower, or maybe some mix there in between of, Tesla higher, Apple lower, or Apple higher, Tesla lower, that sort of thing. And the numbers were in. They poll closed right before Showtime, and you guys were all firmly in the higher camp, 57.5%. You guys pretty much leaned that way the entire time, so it wasn't like movement this morning biased you or anything. You guys are leaning that way back on Friday, I do believe, as well, and throughout the weekend. Lower, number 2, 18.8%, so clearly no love there. And then we've got Tesla lower, Apple higher, 12.2%, and Tesla higher, Apple lower, 11.6%. Yeah, and at the time we posted this poll, it was Thursday night, I believe, and Apple was at 506, Tesla at 2153. And if you adjust them both for their splits right before the show, at least, they've moved since then. But Tesla was at nearly 2,400, 2,395, and Apple was at 516. So both of them were north of that level. So you guys were right. Winner, chicken dinner out there for you guys. Brian and I will get into that a little bit more on Thursday on the old OPR. Actually, on Wednesday when we record it. We'll see if we can get it out live to you. I know sometimes Ally folks are a little skittish about doing the live, but we'll see if we can get it out live for you. Otherwise, you'll get it in your ear holes, hot and heavy, on Wednesday later on that day. Mr. Rock Lobster, does this surprise you that A, the stocks are higher, and that B, that our audience went this way as well?
No, I did you ask us this question on Thursday? I can't quite remember.
I did. I think you faded it lower aggressively.
It's possible. It's possible. I didn't have anything left. I had like pre-split ideas, and I got out of them probably early. I think it was like Wednesday of last week or maybe even before. They were a good ride, I thought, but after that I figured, there might be a little profit taking, but nope. So I really didn't have a dog in that fight anymore, but Clearly, the people speak, and it looks right now as though the peoples were right.
The peoples were right. I was just kidding. I think you might have gone higher. I don't recall your exact analysis. I'll just put you and Uncle Mike, to be nice, to be charitable, I'll put you guys in the higher category. Like our genius listeners out here. Speaking of our genius listeners, we got that poll live. Let's look really quickly and check in. Let's see how smart these folks really are. It's a tie right now in the early voting. Both Baywatch and KnightRider at 50% even. So it's a dead heat. Let's see what you guys can make happen out there. Really quickly before we roll on out of the option block here, let's look at some quick earnings here after the bell. Today after the bell, we got Zoom, a name a lot of people have gotten more familiar with over the past 6 months or so. Zoom popping off after the bell. Tuesday, not a heck of a lot. H&R Block, that's really kind of about it. Wednesday, we've got Macy's. They've had some interesting developments on their front of late, mostly on the negative side with all their stores getting raided in major metropolitan centers. Vera Bradley, Guess, and Five Below. So a lot of clothing-oriented retail there on Wednesday, and CrowdStrike for the cybersecurity. Thursday, we got Michael's and then Campbell's Soup out there, and Broadcom as well. Let's see what reports we have hot and heavy for you here. Let's start with Zoom. They're popping off today after the bell. They were just a tick under $300 as of the time of this report. They were pricing in about 33.5 in terms of dollar moves out there, and in the past they've moved about $30.5. So about $3 juicy out there. We'll see if that's warranted in this era where pretty much all vol goes to die post earnings out here. Five Below, same deal. They are the more premium dollar store because they're $5. Let's see, they were at $112.25. They were pricing in $8.56. In the past, they've moved $7.05. So a little extra juice on the Five Below out here as well. Let's see if we got any other fun ones out here. Looks like, is this Campbell's Soup? I do believe so. 52.14 is where they were as of this report. They were pricing in $2.84, and in the past, they moved $3.54. So a little bit lighter on the juice side, which is hard to argue against here in this vol apocalypse era, at least from an earnings perspective. Let's go out to another one we haven't talked about in a while, DocuSign. They're popping off on the 3rd after the bell. They were also fairly rich, $2.1525. They were pricing in $22.65. In the past, they moved $18.25. So a little bit rich out there in DocuSign as well. Again, a lot of virtual document signing probably going on out there in this pandemic era as we keep on rolling right on into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody. Time to get weird, time to get wild. Time to get downright whimsical. Yup, it is time for the Odd Block. Let's unleash our Eye of Sauron, see what he comes back to us with. And it looks like he's fixed his gaze beyond the gates of Mordor onto our first name here. This is ACM, which is AECOM. AECOM, AECOM. This is an engineering company. Yeah, this is an engineering technology company, they call themselves here. And yeah, ticker symbol ACM. This is a newcomer to the Odd Block, I do believe. Let's see how our friend is faring. Today, up about $0.50, so not a huge move, about 1.25%. They're trading a little bit shy of $40, about $39.75. A year ago, they were not that far south of where they are right now, but almost $5. They were $34.92, and they kind of slowly rallied all the way up for, actually, I should say, beginning of the year. They hit about $50, and then they kind of hovered at that level for a while until we all know what happened in February. A wee bit of a sell-off came along. Not sure why that is, you know. Seemed like a lot of charts dipped down around that time. I'm still trying to research why that is as we move on into how low they got here. It's like they got down intraday, or I should say at the close of 23.82, and they got down intraday to about 21.75. So quite a sell-off there from about $50, cut more than in half. And then they kind of started rebuilding pretty quickly. By April 30th, they were back up to 36.25. Then they kind of gave some of that back again, and a little bit of a post-sell-off malaise down to $30, and they rallied all the way up. Take a guess what day they peaked at, listeners. If you said June 8th, you've been listening to the show for a little bit, where they hit 45.15, and then they've never looked back since then. That's the tail of the tape for a lot of our names. Outside of these FANG names we've been talking about for a while, they all had their rally into June 8th, and then they all kind of gave up the ghost since then. And it's never really looked back. It got down to about 35 and change again, and it's kind of been hovering in this mid to high 30s level ever since, right around threatening 40 right now, 39.70, but still a wee bit off that June 8th high, which was about 45 and change. So it's got a ways to go to get back there. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron paper thinks. Maybe it thinks it can get back there. Let's find out. Let's see. We've got, looks like D's 45's going up 10,000 times. Pretty sizable for a name like ACM. I don't have their ADV off the top of my head here, but I'm going to guess it's a wee bit lower than 10,000. This market probably reflects that. It was 60 cents at $1.65 for these calls when these went up over there. It was like on the MIAX, 10,000 times for $1.65. This guy said, you know what, I'm going to take all of these you got on the offer. Didn't have to trade through it. Didn't get any price improvement, that's for sure. He said 60 at 65, 165. Okay, I'll take it. 10,000 times. What do you got? And so he took them down there. These are clearly opening over there on the MIAX. There are earnings in this cycle. The next earnings are on November 10th. So a little bit of earnings juice perhaps baked in there as well. So the 45 level is an interesting one, Mr. Rock Lobster, because it looks like it's a fair bit of call love. I mean, unless he got one of the best sales for a call overwrite going, in which case I need this guy's broker. But looks like 45 is right around that June 8th high. So this guy is saying he can make it back to that June 8th level by December. He's willing to pay $1.65, 10,000 times for that privilege. Mr. Rock Lobster, A, do you concur with that? And then B, if so, what are your thoughts on this guy going pretty sizable to the upside here in everyone's favorite engineering company, ACOM?
Well, you know that options do love a bull market, don't you, Mark Longo?
Someone has said that to me once or twice or maybe 8 million times.
The beneficent chairman of the Options Insider Radio conglomerate, Global. You got to say global now because that's the hot thing to say, global. Global head of VP of sales, global this, global that.
We're huge in Malaysia, baby. Huge.
You look at this and you look at a dollar-wide market and you think, oh my gosh.
You think get the hell out of Dodge, right? And this guy says, I'm going to take it all.
I just think somebody just, it's why, and people keep asking, like, why is the VIX so hot? Because people are just saying, okay, the market's a dollar wide, I'll just take 10,000 on the offer. That's why vol's so hot, because liquidity keeps getting pulled from the market and it ain't going back in. So, could they have done better? Who knows? All I know is they want to get long. I don't think it's an unreasonable purchase because you have to be realistic, right? December, what can happen in 5 months? You would have to say, what happened in the last 5 months from now? Go back 5 months from now. Nothing happened. What happened? 5 months? Nothing. So I don't think this is an unreasonable purchase given the amount of time. Of course, the average person just go buy some weekly calls in Tesla because the stock goes up 100 or 200 bucks a day, which is what it's doing. This is one of those, I would say, I think there's a ton of companies like this that are kind of looking for the rebound, haven't gotten close to recovering their highs. People are looking for value. And, if the COVID isn't as bad as everybody thinks, people start kind of getting back to their normal routine. So this is like what I would call a normal routine bet on a stock. Although I don't own this one, I'm doing the same thing. It hasn't worked yet. That's making money is what's ever left of all the Q stocks that I own. But I figure this will make money one of these days. So I like the idea. It just hasn't worked for me yet. It just has not worked yet.
Yeah, it's funny how you and I both had the same reaction. We looked at this market and we were both like, ugh. And this guy's like, I'm going to take it all. So we're going to come back to this one and see how our friend fared because he paid for the privilege. You might as well at least reward him with a second appearance. By the way, Mr. Rock Lobster, I got a smile on my face. You know why?
Because it's one of your, it's a stock with a good name.
No, we're not even there yet. I'm looking at our poll, and KnightRider has just edged ahead, 55.6%. So there you go. It's the endless debate. You know, there you go, Uncle Mike. You know, he signed up for Twitter just to mess up with our poll, right, sir?
That's what I do.
You know what? I just think the sad part is people just don't understand Baywatch. They just don't understand.
Good stuff. It's the old Pamela Anderson versus talking car debate that has raged for decades. I know in the 80s which one I preferred. I was definitely in the talking car camp. Maybe a little bit later that could have changed. But interesting. Also, there was a spin-off series, I believe, called Baywatch Nights where Hasselhoff fought monsters, which I didn't even realize that's what that show got into, which makes me kind of want to go check that one out now. Hasselhoff versus a werewolf? Yeah, maybe put me down for that. As we keep on rolling into our next... I'm getting way off the rails here. But in my defense, it is kind of awesome. Let's go to our next name, our Eye of Sauron here. We've got Washington Real Estate Investment Trust, ticker symbol WRE. So the REITs are back, Mr. Rocklops. We had a REIT Palooza here. REIT Put Palooza going on the show here for a while. Let's see if that's back in action. Let's see. This one trading $21.88. Off about 60 cents or about 2.5%. This is the name that had an interesting year. A year ago was about 26.5, so a wee bit north of where it is right now. Topped out right before the madness, February 13th at 32.02. And then it kind of never looked back. It sold off down to 18.01 back in the middle of March. We all know how well REITs fared during this madness. Spoiler alert, not well. And then it kind of rallied up again, hit a mid. I'm looking at this chart. I see a peak. I don't even have to go there to know exactly what day it is. It is June 8th where it rebounded back up to 25.46 and then immediately just went right back down again, and now we're at 21.88 or so where we find ourselves today. So off of the lows, but also off of the recent June 8th highs as well, where we find ourselves for WRE. What does our Eye of Sauron find? Let's see. We've got October puts. So it is more put paloozas and REITs, Mr. Rocklop. So this time they are the OC 32 puts. This is another atrocious market. These were a nickel at 85 cents. I'm amazed people are getting things done in these markets. I mean, this is the tiny REIT, doesn't trade a lot of paper. I understand why this market is so wide. It's just, as an old school market maker, that kind of market makes me a little bit sick to my stomach. But hey, they got something done here, so someone decided that wasn't discouraging. They also got a heck of a bit of price improvement here. They got this up for 32 cents, which is an interesting price, showing that market was not reflective of anything of what was going on out here in this. And they went for 32 cents, 3,600 times over there on the Philly. These are October. There are earnings in this name, but they are on October 22nd. Let me pull up the October count. I don't think, it's not going to fall within the cycle. That's a week after expiration. So Mr. Rock Lobster, this is all kinds of weird. We got someone drawing a line in the sand at the 20 level, which is north of their 52-week low, but not that far north. And then also perhaps doing it almost to earnings, but 1 week shy of earnings. What are your thoughts on this? Line in the sand, or did he get the scoop of a lifetime? And then B, what are your thoughts on these funky puts here in everyone's favorite REIT, the Washington REIT?
I have to say, I have a bit of a bone to pick with you, Mr. Longo, today.
Uh-oh. Is it about the Baywatch thing?
I'm actually letting that pass. You know, the millennials just don't know. They don't know what they're missing, but we'll let that slide. I believe we were going to, maybe you could talk to your data gurus behind the wall at the Options Insider Radio Network and see the success ratio of the line in the sand put indicator, as it were.
That could be an interesting one. A lot of them would be REITs of late, it would seem like.
It is, and and this is a REIT, Washington real estate. So let's put it this way: is the federal government ever going to stop growing? No. So I think somebody's just looking at yield. I mean, they got a good price for this. It still pays a dividend. I assume Washington's paying the rent, or if they are, or businesses that service Washington, if they're not boarded up or whatever, who knows? But I think the line in the sand put trade, the level looks about right. They're looking for yield. If they got that price, 60 cents or whatever, for the sale, I think it was a pretty good sale, to be honest. And I think a good entry point. I think, again, more like there's businesses that thrived in COVID, and then there's everybody else. So this is a business that suffered, probably hasn't come back quite yet, and they're taking their 32 cents, which is a little better than 1% a month to sit on this and possibly take a 20 delivery in WRE. I don't think this is too bad of a trade, but like I said, I've been doing a lot of these and taking a lot of delivery and writing calls, and really haven't made a little money, but it had nothing compared to just sitting and watching some of these other tech stocks go up. So I had to say I like the idea, but again, it hasn't made me the big bucks yet, more like sort of snoozy and going sideways bucks.
No, who doesn't have snoozy and going sideways bucks is Mr. Musk. He is now apparently richer than Zuckerberg after the split. That coming out from Bloomberg as of an hour ago. They like to keep tabs on who's wealthier than who. And apparently Musk trumping Zuckerberg now in this. All he had to do was say his stock was split. He wanted to take his stock private at 420. That seems like such a distant memory out there. Since we're talking Tesla, let's round it out here really quickly. We got to get Uncle Mike here, too. Let's do a quick hit, Mr. Rock Lobster, on the final one. I have Sauron pulling up a weird Tesla print. We don't usually get a lot of Tesla prints on here because as active as it is, we don't get a lot of interesting, crazy blocks. This time, there's so much paper going on out there, probably are, including, looks like someone, Mr. Rock Lobster, dumping some upside to the tune of the ACK 400s. Just saying that out loud sounds crazy, but yet that's where we are, selling them for $118. The market on these was a little bit tighter than our previous ones. 114 at 124.60. These are expiring on the 9th, so these are in the weekly. So someone going out a month and change, Mr. Rock Lobster, selling them for 118. So obviously, probably a covered call, probably willing to dump the stock at 518, and the stock's at 487. So right now, so he could be out of these by the end of the day, the way this thing's moving out here. Mr. Rock Lobster, you concur this is someone taking advantage of some juice, and you know what? If the worst comes to pass, this thing turns around. He's got $118 worth of cushion to the downside, sir.
That's like I wonder where they bought the stock that they wrote against.
2,252. I'm just going to guess it.
Well, I guess it could be anywhere but here right now, right? And it would be a wiener. So
Yes.
I think me just trying to chase a call butterfly in Tesla about 20 minutes before showtime and got nothing. Anyway, yes, I think somebody's writing this, taking the money, and hey, what the heck? Might as well have some fun at, now I have to do everything 5-to-1 to do the arithmetic, but this is not a small move. Even for Tesla pre-split, this is a pretty big new move today. It's over $200. It's like $220. So still moving like it's 1999.
This is the world we live in as we head on into the Monday strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, listeners. It's that time of the week. It is time for Uncle Mike to hold court with a wee bit of strategery. Uncle Mike, I will set you up to put a smile on your face because it does seem going into the strategy block here that the KnightRider is pulling away with roughly 2/3 of our votes versus only 1/3 for Baywatch. That means Mr. Rock Lobster, while Uncle Mike is talking, he was gaming away while you were talking. Now it's your turn. You got to get in there and make your voice heard for Baywatch. Meanwhile, Uncle Mike, sir, does that put a smile to your KnightRider loving face, sir?
Yes and no. It does put a smile to my face, but it doesn't put a smile to my face being accused of Chicago voting and stuffing the box, because I believe in honor and integrity when it comes to KnightRider voting.
Don't we all, sir? It's Chicago. Vote early, vote often. What could happen?
There you go. So for the strategy block today, I want to go through something that, or discuss an issue that a lot of our listeners might be facing right now. I know I am, and it's a good problem to have. It's when you sell puts or put spreads and the market goes just way up. So what do you do with that when you still have the juice left in your premium and you want to take profits, but still not quite near the level of profits that you want to take? So first off, what I typically like to do when I'm selling puts or vertical put spreads is I want to take profits when we reach roughly 80% of the potential profits. So for example, if I sell a put or a put spread for that matter, for $1, as soon as I can get out of it for 20 cents to buy to close the spread or the short put for 20 cents, that's typically when I get out. That's not always that way, but I'd say it's usually around the level that I like to take profits. And I'm just using the $1 as a simple example. So what if you sold a put or a put spread for $1, and since the market's been just going up like gangbusters lately, right now, let's say that short put or that short put spread is worth maybe 60 or 70 cents, and you still got a week or two left on it, or 2 weeks left on it, or 3 weeks left on it for that matter. What can you do? Well, the first suggestion I have is to smile because the market is going your way, so that is a good problem to have. However, right now, you have less deltas on the table, and the time decay didn't really help as much as it needs to as of yet because you still have a lot of time left. So what do you do? Well, let me give you some choices on a couple things. First off, if you are still bullish, meaning you still think that stock is going to go higher or index, whatever you're trading, one thing you could do is you could roll up and in. So for example, let's say you had a 2-month short put that you were selling, market goes up, and you want to get the same premium, but you're okay taking on a little more risk because of the fact that you're still bullish on the underlying. Well, you can roll your put up and then to a more near-term time frame for a similar premium. That's one way with which to do it. Now, I caution you when doing so, you are adding more deltas to your position when doing so, because if you're wrong, it's going to hurt more if you're wrong, because the market's going to snap back into your face, and even though you have less time decay, if it goes against you right away, the gamma is going to bite you, and no one wants to get bit by gamma. So that is one way of doing it, but the advantage of that is that you still have a fairly decent cushion between the price of the underlying and where your short put or put spread is, and you have less time. So you could get your profit sooner when doing such a thing. So that's one way with which to do it. The other way with which to do things is to do what I'm doing right now, and that is be patient. I am just sitting on a lot of my short puts and put spreads for that section of the portfolio, just because of the fact that we have just gone up so parabolically that I think that we could be in store for a pullback, but I still want to be part of this market because, after all, I am Uncle Mike, and I want to have some exposure to it. Now, I don't feel comfortable rolling up and in puts or put spreads right now, just because of the fact that we really have not had a pullback in what seems like an eternity. But with that, I still want to be a part of it. So let's say that the market were to go sideways. Well, in time, I'm going to be in pretty good shape because my puts will expire worthless, or I'll get out at 20 cents or 20% like I typically like to do, just depending on when it happens. If the market goes higher, well, I still have some deltas on the table. Granted, as the market goes higher, I'll have less and less delta exposure because that's the way that short puts and put spreads work. But let's say we do have a little bit of a pullback. If that happens, I'm not going to have any more risk on the table than I did originally, and I already have a little bit of time decay built in. So I think there is a time and place for both of the strategies that I just mentioned, and I've done both and will continue to do both. But right now in this market, I'm just sitting tight. And that's the strategy block, last one of August.
And we're not just sitting tight. We're going to keep on rolling right on into our final segment. It is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we break down what we're watching, what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of this week until we can gather here together on the old OB again on Thursday to break down the latter portion of the week. Mr. Rock Lobster, we're coming into the final minutes here of our flash poll, also the final minutes of our show. I will allow you to guess, sir. What do you think is winning our beloved flash poll, sir?
I hate to say it, but I think the KnightRider's winning. People are clearly insane. Clearly insane.
Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, I think you will be happy to know that as of right now, I'm going to call it right now. It's got a few more minutes here on the poll, but I'm going to call it right now because the show's got to come to an end. Not the rest of the network listeners. We'll be back in a little bit with crypto, but for right now, the old OB coming to an end. KnightRider, Uncle Mike. Oh, this looks like it's distancing a little bit. It just ticked again, but I'm going to call it here. 62.5% for the old KnightRider. Looks like a couple of votes coming in for Baywatch here to try to bump it. Mr. Rock Lobster frantically scrambling here. Not enough to do it, Mr. Uncle Mike. 62.5% for KnightRider, 37.5%. A valiant fight by Pamela Anderson and the crew, but not enough to take it. So, A, Uncle Mike, what is your celebration for that? How excited are you? And then B, what else are you watching for the rest of the week, sir?
Well, I'm very excited. I think that it just shows yet again how intelligent our listeners are. It reaffirms the belief that I've had for well north of 900 episodes that we have the best listeners in the world. So that's what excites me. In terms of what I'm watching on the marketplace, wanting to see what we can do with this 3,500 level in the S&P 500, and just seeing if Tesla's ever going to come down. This is some crazy times in the marketplace, just with the parabolic moves with which we have. So continuing to watch and kind of be bullish from a distance, but still bullish. Like I said, I am Uncle Mike. I got to be bullish.
I think for the Baywatch, if you watch like the slow motion montage in the intro, I think you got about 90% of what that show's got to offer right there. You don't really even need to watch the rest of the show. KnightRider, you get deep into the subplots. The criminals operated above the law there. And of course, there was a talking British car. What's better than that? All cars should be British. That should just be a law going forward. Mr. Rock Lobster, you got to take your comeuppance with a little bit of grain of salt here, sir. Your beloved Baywatch lost badly. So what are your thoughts on that, A? And then B, what else are you watching for the rest of the week as you look to soothe your wounds, sir?
Well, I would say, though, that when you do watch the intro credits on Baywatch, you pretty much have watched the show.
Yes.
Well, plot lines might change a little bit.
Do you really need to see Pamela Anderson act and deliver plot?
Well, she delivered what she needed to deliver for that show. So what am I watching? Well, tech, VIX, my guess, Q stopped going up. Vol will start to come in. People finally realize, hey, I might sell some calls because now's the time to sell some calls, make all this big money. But until that happens, I think this market just keeps going. So it's still the same thing, sort of 4 days up for tech, and maybe you get 1 day of small participation with everything else. And then they just sell off again. So it's kind of good for that triple income strategy. For the non-tech stocks, tech stocks, just, I don't know, just buy call spreads or calls or whatever, and just watch them. Because that's what we got. So why fight it?
Why fight it? Indeed, the rest of the market isn't fighting it. They're fighting a losing battle since June 8th. So once you get outside those crazy FANG names and a few others, it's been a very different market. Tale of two markets, to borrow a oft-used phrase here. Unfortunately, listeners, that music means we're up against it here for the old OB, but fret not, fear not, if you need a little more in your ear holes. I'll be back in exactly an hour with some fun guests, talk all things crypto. Who's joining us this week? Well, you got to tune in to find out. I don't even know. It's a surprise to me. Find out right before showtime. That's what makes it fun over here. And, of course, keep those ear holes tuned in between. We'll plug in some fun stuff into the live stream, get some education, maybe some OBC, maybe some vol views. Never know what's going to be in there in between. We'll be back in exactly an hour to break down all the fun vol and skew and all that good stuff in the land of crypto. Spoiler alert, it's a lot. And we'll see. Maybe we got some fun polls in store for there as well. We'll find out as we keep on rolling. But before we get to that, we got to wrap up this one. Let's go around the horn. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, if folks are intrigued, maybe they want to call you up and discuss the comparative benefits of the original KnightRider versus the 2000 remake. Where should they go? What should they do, sir?
They don't bother calling me for that. I haven't even seen the 2000 remake. But in addition to KnightRider appreciation, not only do I offer that, but I am now, it is that time of year again, I am offering a specific pumpkin spice portfolio review. Feel free to contact me to figure out what the heck that is, or, well, in reality, it's really nothing but a portfolio review that's called a pumpkin spice portfolio review, but nonetheless, reach out to me, give me a call, go to my website for more information, stcharleswealth.com.
Is it pumpkin spice time already? Wow. I thought we had to get out of August for a pumpkin spice, sir.
Not me. We do things early in St. Charles.
All right, have at it there, sir. By the way, just to finish off our well-trodden KnightRider theme by now, when I was looking up that clip earlier in the show, I happened to see some clips of the show. I haven't seen that show in forever. And there's a segment where he first gets the car, and he's amazed that it's changing lanes on its own, and it's signaling on all these things that now, I'd say a lot of cars today, we have like 90% of kit already in these cars. All we're missing is the cool British voice and, of course, the turbo boost. Those are two cool features. But outside of that, we got a lot of kit in the changing lanes, changing speed, all the things that a lot of cars now just do on their own already. Crazy town out here. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on the ever-evolving progress of electronic, or just say self-driving cars? And then B, if folks want to call you up to debate Baywatch versus KnightRider, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
You can go take all those profits and spend them on some education at Option Pit. Look at our memberships, Trading Legion. I run those products, the Vol Trade Club. Mark does Sharp Bets and the Vol Edge. So come on over, check us out, and put on your option learning cap.
Put on your option learning cap, indeed. OptionPit.com is the place to go. And on behalf of the Unklest of Mikes and the Rockingest of Lobsters, and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for sending in those questions. Remember, leave those reviews on your platform of choice if you like what you hear. And we'll be back in a little bit to talk all the fun stuff over there in the land of crypto. And then we'll be back again probably tomorrow for some interviews and all sorts of fun stuff. And then back again on Wednesday, OPR, Bootcamp, lighting it up over there all the way through to Thursday for more of the Option Block.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.